Understanding food truck economics and what expansion looks like in your food truck. This is a great story of what not understanding food truck economics looks like. So after we won the Great Food Truck Race Season 2, it was 2012. We had a huge following prior to the show, but after the show, it was bananas. We had honestly 300-400 person lines when we would open the food truck, and it was selling out no matter what we put on the food truck. And in that year, our business grew revenue-wise from $400,000 to $2.4 million in our second year. We 6X'd the business, and it showed. Everything was difficult. We were bursting at the seams. We had too many employees. And in that year, I made less money with that expansion than I did the year prior when we were doing 1/6 the gross revenue. Do you understand how crazy that is? We were so busy. We had lines everywhere we opened up. We were sold out everywhere we went, and we weren't profitable. This is why having a good grasp on your finances and understanding how to expand is so important to the lifeline of the business. When it comes to financial management, you need to have a budget in place for what you think you're gonna sell. In this section, I'm gonna tell you what averages are. Now, there are always going to be outliers, and your business may vary, but it might be helpful to use these estimates as a good guiding light to what you're gonna be doing on the food truck. So first and foremost, you need to figure out what your average price point is. If your average price point on the truck is about $20 per person, that's gonna help inform a lot of decisions. Most food trucks in an hour will serve between, let's say, 30 on the low side, up to 80 to 100 on the very high side, depending on that menu efficiency we talked about earlier. So if the average person's spending $20 and it goes as low as 300, your lowest shift really shouldn't go lower than $400 to $700 on the truck. That's not going to typically cause any profit. In fact, that low of a shift might even be a loss. And so $400 to $700 is on the very low end of a shift. On a very high end of a shift, you're talking about serving potentially 80 to 100 people for about 2 hours. Most services last for about 2 hours. And so let's say on the very high end, 100 people per hour, that's 200 people, and you're selling at $20 per spot, that's $4,000. If this helps you understand the range of lowest to very high, on the low end, you're talking about $600, and on the very high end, you're talking about $4,000 per shift. And that's actually pretty accurate for what the lime truck can do, depending on how busy we are. Another really important part of understanding your finances so that you can do the correct forecasting, modeling, and making sure your business is profitable is you need a system to keep track of everything you're doing. Most systems in food trucks are called point of sale. A lot of food trucks don't want to put in a full system because it's expensive and it's difficult, and not every food truck has a generator to keep power. But there are things that are built for food trucks. I'm not saying you should use Square. However, Square is really flexible when it comes to using your iPhone and iPad, not having a point of sale system, and still will track sales metrics and data for you so that when you look back to see, hey, we were at this public event 6 months ago, how did we do? You can go look and say, oh, we did $1,000, we sold a ton of chicken, and we sold no vegetarian items. Well, we know that this consumer on this day likes those items, so we can bring more of it. You need data points to run the business. I recommend picking a point of sale system or something that gives you live metrics on what's happening in the business, and it gives you a glossary that you can go back and check in with as time goes by in the business. So we talked about what a good shift could bring in, but let's talk about maximum profitability. This is how you're going to actually make a ton of money on the truck, and it's a really simple equation that you're gonna need to always have in the back of your mind. So on a food truck, it takes about a certain amount of labor to set it up. And so on the lime truck, I know that it takes about 6 hours to get our truck out to an event. And I know it takes about another 4 or 5 to close out the truck. So I have about 11 hours baked in at a certain price per hour that I took an average of when it came to my employees. And so I worked backwards and I realized, okay, my prime cost for labor is X. My prime cost for food is about the same because I did all that recipe development. So when I go out to a shift, if I serve 50 people or 100 people or 150, it becomes incrementally more profitable. And so I want to explain this because it's really important for you at home to understand how these metrics work. So let's say that I spend, for even numbers, $100 to set up the food truck, okay? No matter what. Whatever I do on the shift, it's gonna cost me $100 to set up. So that $100 goes there, and then I now am going out to an event, and the only additional cost that's gonna happen, whether I get 10 orders or 20 orders, is the food cost. Because the labor is already baked in, right? We've already paid for that labor. Those incremental dollars where you make more for doing the same shift, they become much more profitable. If I serve 10 meals for 10 people, I make another $100, right? But I didn't have any more labor to make that. I only had more food costs. You're making incremental dollars. And so for every additional dollar you get in past that labor, you're making 75% profit. So at its core, if your fixed costs are set, the amount of labor that you're putting on the truck, whether you serve 10 people or 100 people, is gonna be 3 people. You know exactly what those numbers are. The only fluctuating number is your cost of goods. And so as you sell more food, you're only paying the food cost and the rest is profit. So making sure when you go out to your shifts that you maximize revenue, that you get more dollars in no matter what, by either upselling them on a combo, adding a dessert, getting them to buy another dish, getting their friend to order from the truck. Every one of those little tiny incremental dollars equals 75% profit and will be hugely valuable to the success of your food truck. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about is bookkeeping, accounting, and payroll. These are not the fun parts of the business, but they are definitely the backbone. There are so many tools out today that weren't available to us 15 years ago, and I recommend you use every one of them. Using tech to get the menial part of the work, the admin part of the work out of the way is extremely smart and will keep you organized so that you could focus on driving sales and creating a cult-like following, which is more important than anything else in the business. Here's step one. You need a good bookkeeper. You need that bookkeeper from day one. This person is going to give you metrics to show you if you are profitable in the business or if you are losing in the business. I used to have a bookkeeper in the business provide me with a P&L every month, but I didn't know how to read the P&L. Therefore, I wasn't making decisions based on that. You need to learn how to read it. You need to watch YouTube classes on it. You need to talk to accounting specialists, and you need to use that as the Bible of making financial decisions in your business. There is one negative with a profit and loss statement, which is it's always reactive. I get a profit and loss statement on average the 15th of the month that's following the month that I want. So imagine I want to see how we did in January. I won't be able to see that until February 15th. So you also need some metrics in your business that will give you a pulse on what's happening in the current. So what we do in the Lime Truck is we set up this comprehensive system where I can find out what the labor costs are for the week and what the food costs are for the week, only 2 days trailing the past week. So on Tuesday of the next week, I will know all of the metrics of what just happened, and I can make better decisions in real time. It's important to know your numbers. This is the #1 mistake I made in the Lime Truck, and I shared with you that when we expanded from year 1 to year 2 and we 6x'd the business, which is unheard of, we ended up losing money. And it's because I didn't have a control on my finances. You need to have a control on those finances. Next, you need a great CPA or accountant. Someone who's gonna help you read the numbers, who's gonna help file your taxes, who's going to help get you have a better grasp of your accounting. And last, you need to do payroll correctly. There are so many services now that for $5, $15 a month will help you handle payroll. I recommend picking the one that's right for you, but do not go down the payroll journey yourself. You need to go to a professional, let them handle this so that you can make sure you're staying compliant with your state and federal guidelines. Most food trucks follow similar profit guidelines. Every food truck's different, so your numbers are gonna be ultimately different, but you want to account for 10 to 20% profit. So if you're making $1,000 on the truck, you'll profit between $100 and $200. This is really important as you start to expand your brand. So if you're going out there and each food truck is doing, let's say $500,000, So your food truck's going out, you're making about $500,000 at the end of the year with that food truck. If you're making 10% before you pay yourself, or 20%, that's $50,000 to $100,000. So you need to understand that metric before expanding. And if you're not paying yourself, you're gonna need to also build that into the model. One of the biggest mistakes the Lime Truck did was we overexpanded and we didn't have a good, tight control on our prime costs, which I mentioned earlier, and our labor was completely out of whack. So we had a labor of about 60%, which although sounds very high, happens more often than you think in the hospitality industry. You need to have control of those costs, and you need to go back to that financial plan that we worked on together earlier, and you need to build a model to see how much profit you need before you go out and get your next truck. It's also important to understand how difficult it is to go from 1 to 2 trucks. Going from 2 to 3 is much easier than it is from going from 1 to 2. And so when you build into your model the costs associated, you need to be sure that you have enough money for a manager, because in that first expansion, you can't do it all by yourself. And so you're gonna wanna build all of these into the expansion plan and be able to make sure that you put a conservative plan together on what profit looks like and how you'll be able to afford and hire good help with that profit. In summary, financials are the backbone of the business, and although aren't very fun, are extremely important to the success of your food truck. I say this wholeheartedly. You need to stay focused and make sure you hire the professionals that are needed to run great financials so that you could focus on driving revenue in the business. This means hire a great bookkeeper from day one. Bookkeeping isn't enough because you're gonna get reactive numbers, so you also need to set up a scorecard with a set of live data so that you can track what's happening in the business proactively and help accomplish and get to those goals that we talked about in those earlier sections. You need a great CPA to help make sure that your accounting stays in lock, that you're compliant with the sales tax, with the government, federal tax, everything that's needed there, and that you're gonna need a great payroll administrator, whether that's a software or a payroll company, so you can let the professionals handle what they need to so you can stay focused.